Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video I'll be doing a ranking of every season of Australian Survivor up to this point. Now this will only be including the Network 10 series of Australian Survivor. I will not be including the 2 seasons that came before that, as again they are not really considered part of the Australian Survivor canon, though they will be included when I eventually get around to doing an international Survivor season ranking down the road. So at the time of this recording, we currently have 5 seasons of Australian Survivor, with the most recent one being Australian Survivor All-Stars. And when I decided to do this video, I really took a deep dive into a lot of these seasons. I did not do a full rewatch of any of these seasons, but I did go back and watch clips from these seasons, reanalyze how the season played out, and through that, to be honest, a lot of my lists changed. Literally every single season moved positions from where it used to be. Let's just jump right into the ranking here. At number 5 here, I actually have the most recent season of the show, Australian Survivor All-Stars. And this was tough because it's like, I love All-Star seasons just as a general concept. I mean, even the original Survivor All-Stars from the US, I enjoyed that season more just due to the fact that there were returning players on it. I feel like Australian Survivor All-Stars is kind of in the same boat as that season, but at the same time, Australian Survivor really hasn't had terrible seasons to put below this one. It's not like Survivor US, where at Survivor US, I mean, we're obviously at 40 seasons now, and there obviously are seasons that are worse than the original All-Stars for me. Here with Australian Survivor All-Stars, it isn't the case. There aren't other seasons that are bad, so because of that, this just ends up landing at the bottom. I feel like this is a very dark season the entire way through. Not that there's anything that bad. I mean, honestly, the original Survivor All-Stars has some like genuinely bad stuff happen there. That isn't really the case of Australian Survivor All-Stars, but at the same time, I do feel like it just has a very dark and negative tone throughout the entire season. There isn't really that much fun throughout this season, and that's kind of the main thing that I take away from the season is I didn't have fun watching it. While David is a great character and he does take up a good chunk of the screen time here, it also means a lot of the other people were just left out of the edit. And I think that's a major knock against this season for me, is that I don't personally feel like David was enough to really carry the season. I mean, we do have other like supporting characters like Shawnee and Moana that did get a decent amount of screen time, but there's also just people that got almost no screen time. I mean, people like Tarzan, people like Jackie, people like Zach, even Sharn that got all the way to the end of the game had under half the amount of confessionals that David did. And not to mention some people from the pre-merge, people like Flick, who got no content until her last couple episodes. John, kind of same thing. Lee got barely any content until obviously his big moment. I feel like a lot of the players with legacies on this season came out of the season, their reputations kind of ruined, or at least not as high as what they originally were. I feel like David is probably the only exception to that. And maybe Brooke and Shawnee, but overall, like, again, Flick, Phoebe, Henry, I mean, Michelle, Lockie, I mean, a lot of these people just came out not looking so great. That being said, there are some good moments on this season. It's not all bad, obviously. I mean, the Daisy blindside is one of the best blindsides in the history of Survivor. To see that plan come together was just so much fun. And for me, Matt Rogers was also a highlight on this season. I thought Matt Rogers was fantastic here. Seeing him play from the bottom in obviously the complete opposite way that he played on his first season was a lot of fun. The Zach blindside towards the end of the game was a lot of fun. The Phoebe blindside both times were both pretty fun. But it's like outside of those rounds, I felt like the game was pretty dull. I felt like during most episodes, I had a pretty good sense of who was going home well before the actual tribal council. It was just such a by the numbers season for me, and I just found that really boring, especially because I found it so clear that David was winning the game from so early on. So for me, it's a tough season to really rank it. And overall, in the grand scheme of Survivor, it's certainly not a terrible season. Like, it's not at the lowest of the low, but in comparison to the other 4 Australian Survivor seasons, it has to land here at number 5. Now I'm at number 4, and I know people won't agree with my opinion of this season. I know this is a season that is well renowned by a lot of the people online, but for me, number 4 has to be Champions versus Contenders 2. And I just never really cared for this season. I even talked about that in my initial review, initially after the season, that something from this season just felt like it was missing for me. Where yes, we had a whole bunch of great characters, and yes, we had some really fun gameplay moments, but I just feel like the editing just really bogged the season down the entire way through for me. Yeah, this is another one where I thought the winner was very predictable. I thought Pia was very clearly set up as the winner from the first episode alone. This is a season where only like half the cast is really memorable. I mean, and that half the cast does make it pretty far into the game. I mean, almost everyone that makes it to merge, I mean, outside of Simon Black and maybe Baden, are like super memorable characters for the show. The problem is that almost everyone that gets taken out pre-merge is just so non-existent on this show. People like Hannah and Casey got like no content. Sam literally had 0 confessionals on the show. Sarah was someone that, despite having one of the higher confessional counts of the pre-merge, was someone that was only featured in literally 3 episodes, with that being the premiere, her boot episode, and then the one episode where she had her freak out. I just feel like this season was edited terribly, and it's a shame too, because again, I think when you look at the game on its own, I think it is a strong season. It has a lot of great characters like David, Luke, Janine, Harry. I think Abby played a decent game. Sean played a pretty decent game. Daisy played terribly, but at least she did things. And this season just has a lot of like really fun moments. I mean, if we're looking at some blindsides, I mean, the blindside of the Sporty 7, we have the tribal where David and Luke both play their idols, and Hannah ends up going home in again, that really crazy tribal there. The Final 5 tribal where Luke plays his advantage to save Pia, that's a lot of fun. The lie from Harry about having a son, that was really great. Like, there are really fun moments throughout this season. But again, the editing bogged the season down, and to be honest, I just never really felt as connected to this season as I did with my top 3 seasons of the show. Again, this is not a bad season of reality television as a whole. It's not a bad season of Australian Survivor. It's just kind of a middle tier one, and because of that, it ranks here at number 4. Now at number 3, and I'm very surprised this season's this high, because I remember when the season aired, I did not particularly care for it. I think as time has gone on, I do have more of appreciation for it. And I did do a rewatch of the season like about a year or 2 ago, and I think during that my opinion of it definitely went up a bit, and that is Australian Survivor 2016, also known as Season 1. And there are definitely bad parts. I mean, the entire post-merge is mostly bad. I mean, that stretch from like the final 13 to like the final 7 is some of the worst episodes in all of Australian Survivor. But I love the pre-merge of this season. I think the pre-merge of this season is one of the best pre-merges in the history of Survivor. I mean, there's so many great moments. Largely after the swap where we get that Rowan blindside, which is just incredible. And we have Phoebe on her incredible run where she saves herself through flipping Kate and Craig against Andrew, and then using her idol to blindside Craig. That stuff's really great. She saves herself initially and gets the target on Chrissy, and then she saves herself initially and gets the target on Christy, but then obviously she gets screwed over by Twist, and all that stuff. Like, again, that part of this season is really great. Even if we want to look at before the swap, that double tribal where Nick gets voted out and then Connor gets taken out when they were like almost going to rocks, like all of that stuff is so fantastic. Dez as the first boot is fantastic. I mean, really, again, this entire section of the game is just incredible to watch. The problem is that it has that really terrible stretch from the final 13 to the final 7. And again, the final 7 round, though, is where the season kind of picks up again. I mean, that Brooke blindside's really great. I mean, the final 6 rounds pretty slow, but then final 5 to the end is pretty good. Where, again, a lot of it hinges around, is Christy going to flip or not? And I thought that was pretty compelling TV. The finale, despite how much I hate that Christy won that season, it is a great TV moment to have her win final immunity in the way that she does. And again, I think overall this season does have really high highs, but also has some really low lows. And those highs for me are higher than that we got from seasons 4 and 5 of the show. I just felt like those highs were enough for me to rank it here at number 3. Now for my top 2, my top 2 are pretty obvious at this point, right? But I think at number 2 here, I gotta make a call that I don't think is going to be a popular one. This is a season that is widely looked at as the best season of the show. But for me, at number 2, I have Australian Survivor 2017, also known as Season 2. And this is a great season of reality television. It is. I mean, like, I'm not going to deny that. It is really great. It has a pretty fun cast. So many iconic characters come from this cast. I mean, Jericho, Luke, Henry, Sarah, Tara, Michelle, AK. I mean, and Annalise. I mean, there's a good chunk of really great characters on this season. There's some really great blindsides on this season. Obviously, the Henry blindside's a big one. Tessa blindside is just ridiculous. The Adam blindside, even from episode 2, I think is an all-time great tribal. There's a couple things that do bog it down for me. Now, I've never been a big fan of Australian Survivor's format, and they do kind of fix it a bit with season 3 onward, where from that point, the number of days is reduced, the number of episodes is reduced, meaning less non-elimination episodes. But here in season 2, we do have a good chunk of those, along with season 1 as well. It's not something I didn't particularly like. I do find certain sections of the game pretty slow for me. I mean, like that stretch where Sam and then Mark go home, I just found that kind of boring, especially because it was so blatantly set up in the previous episodes. To be honest, a lot of the post-swap section of the game I find really slow. I mean, we get the Jackie boot, the Kent boot, those are kind of predictable. We then get the AK boot and the Odette boot. It's like those things were just so blah to me, because it's like it was so obvious that those things were going to happen. And while there's still fun moments obviously within those episodes, like just overall the actual game being played during those sections of the game was kind of dull to me. That being said, I do think a lot of the post-merge is pretty strong. I mean, the Jared boot was kind of like, that was kind of obvious, but then we get the Annalise stuff where her idol gets nullified, and then the Henry blindside's really fun, Tessa blindside's really great, and then it's kind of a slower stretch where Sarah and then Luke go home, which were kind of just, again, kind of predictable. Then at the final 6 where Ziggy goes home, I thought that was a pretty fun tribal where coming into it, we were led to believe that they were almost going to rocks there. At the final 5, we have like Lockie fighting for his life and him actually being able to get Michelle to flip her vote, and that was fun. And that Final 4 round just as a whole is one of my favorite episodes of Australian Survivor ever. I think this also has one of the most unpredictable outcomes to the show, where, I mean, I think by the time you get to the finale, I think it's pretty clear Jericho's probably going to win. Though I will say that out of the 5 seasons of the show, I feel like this is the one I was the most unsure about who the winner was going to be. I mean, obviously Pia and David were really predictable winners, but even with Christy and Shane, I felt like there was enough foreshadowing within the seasons to make me think that, yeah, they're more than likely going to be the winner at the end of this. But with Jericho, I never really saw him as the clear-cut winner of the season. But I will say that I think him winning is also one of the most satisfying endings to a season, where he's obviously a great character, and just seeing him being able to win the game while also playing a decent game at that, I do think was fun to watch. So really, the reason why I have this season at number 2 isn't really because I have so many knocks against the season. It's not because I dislike the season. I think this is a great season of the show. It's just that I feel like for the next season that we'll be talking about, the number 1 season of the show for me, I have higher highs for that season. So because that, Australian Survivor Season 2 lands here at number 2. Now number 1, the best season of Australian Survivor of all time for me is Australian Survivor Champions vs. Contenders 1. And again, I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I really thought about this for a while, because for a while this was number 2 on the list. I originally had obviously season 2 at number 1, but I thought about it more and more, and like I just had more fun watching this season. I think this is the most fun I had watching an Australian Survivor season for me personally. I feel like it's the season with the least amount of slow sections in the game. I think it's the season with some of the highest highs in the history of the game. I just had a lot of fun watching this season, and that's a lot of the reason why I do have it at number 1. I do think its cast is a bit inconsistent. It's not to the extent of Australian Survivor Champions vs. Contenders 2, but I mean, it's not as consistent as Australian Survivor Season 2. Though, I mean, to be fair, I mean, there's some duds on that season as well, but I do think this is the first season where the edit did start to get a bit lopsided, where some people started to get buried by the edit, which obviously becomes more prominent in future seasons, which is something I don't particularly care for, but I did feel like this season had enough of a balance to where I wasn't really perturbed by it. I know a lot of people say that the pre-merge of this season is really slow, however, I don't look at it that way. I mean, if we look at it, like, we started off with the Matt Dyson boot, which is really, really fun, where he blows up his game at Tribal. We have all the Russell Hantz stuff in those first 2 episodes, which is really great, leading to his downfall in episode 2. Episode 3 is pretty slow, where Damien goes home. But the Steve blindside's pretty great, where all the alpha guys get blindsided there. We do have the couple quits there, which aren't particularly great, with Jenna obviously having to quit due to her being injured and Moana being sick. But even during that, we have Shane like finding an idol in front of everyone, and that's pretty great. But then we get the Benji storyline starting, and I think all that stuff is really great. I really love Benji as a character on the season. I know people found them repetitive. I really enjoyed it. I love seeing him take down Tegan, and Tegan returning to the game, and him having to deal with Tegan and Heath coming after him, and him being able to somehow squeak by through his relationships with Shawnee and Fenella. We also have the Heath idol play where he nullifies all the votes except for 1, and he votes out Anita, which I think that would have been better if he like voted out Benji or something. That would have been a great moment. But still, I mean, it's still fine. We then get the post swap, which I think is pretty fun for the most part. I think the send or save twist there with Tegan is really fun, where like she gets voted out again, but it looks like she's going to be saved for a second, and then Benji and Robbie turn on her anyway, and she goes home anyway. I just found that tribal to be a lot of fun. But then we get to the post-merge, and the post-merge of the season is what makes the season as great as it is. And again, as I said, I don't think the pre-merge is bad either. The post-merge is just fantastic. We start off with the Lydia boot, really big blindside there. We have the Benji and Matt Rogers storyline, where Benji's trying to plot Matt Rogers' downside while getting on his good side. And then at the final 9, it all culminates in that amazing Matt Rogers boot, one of my favorite tribals in the history of Survivor, where that entire episode is just fantastic as well, where we also have Sharn finding an idol and it falling out of her pants so everyone knows she has the idol. She gets up to play the idol on Matt Rogers. Benji convinces her to change it to playing it on herself, and we get the Matt Rogers blindside in a 5-4 vote. Such a fantastic tribal. And immediately after this, we get the Benji boot, which is really great as well, where Benji's alliance turns on him. Shawnee wastes her extra vote, and then Benji goes out on a revote anyway, with an idol on his pocket. All that stuff's really great. And then from that point on, it's really fun to watch Shane and Sharn scrape from the bottom. Where, I mean, we do have the Dead Man's Island twist or whatever that was called, and that was terrible. But outside of that, we get a really fun end game where Brian messes up the split vote, causing Sharn to successfully use her idol and take out Fenella. At the final 5, we have Shawnee flipping against Brian and Monica, taking out Monica. At the final 4, we have Shawnee being in a really terrible position and trying to cause a 2-1 vote, and that's really fun. Finale's pretty strong, where obviously Sharn wins final immunity and makes the wrong decision and taking Shane to the end and ends up losing in a 5-4 vote. That final tribal council is really great, with a lot of back and forth, with Sharn being called out for not playing an honest game. This entire season is just so great in my eyes, and I know a lot of people don't agree. But for me, I just find it the most consistent season out of the bunch. I find it the season I had the most fun with out of the bunch. Again, that Matt Rogers blindside is my favorite moment in all of Australian Survivor. Mixing that in with the bevy of strong moments within the entire season, I just feel like this had to be my number one. There we go. Those are all the seasons of Australian Survivor so far ranked. But yeah, now that we're done with these Australian Survivor videos, again, the winner ranking, season ranking, it's time to finally move on to the International Survivor winner and season rankings, which that should be some fun. I don't know when those are coming out, but I'll try to get them out whenever I can. And then after those, it's time for the global Survivor rankings. And oh my God, that's going to take forever, but it's for down the road anyway. But for now, that's it for my season rankings of Australian Survivor. Thank you for watching.